What we're going to do today is show you how to set up a basic shop with some of the very basic tools and materials that you'll need to get started. Every shop should have a good set of hand tools like what you see here. They should include long nose pliers, wire cutters, regular hand pliers, small hammer, X-Acto knives and blades, and even this saw, a set of files including miniature files like what you see here, a drill and some drill bits, a soldering gun and solder, measuring devices such as measuring tapes, scales, and rules, a set of regular screwdrivers, both Phillips and blade. You also need an extremely high quality set of precision screwdrivers such as these. What makes these screwdrivers unique is this red tip. You'll notice that when the screwdriver turns, the tip remains stationary. Well, there's a reason for that. When you put it in your hand, you can put it on the knuckle of your hand like this, and you can get a great deal of force behind it and still be able to control it very easily. A set of tweezers like this is good with several different tips. This little device is called a third hand, and it's invaluable when you're soldering two wires together and you need a third hand. You need some small 1 and 2 inch paint brushes and a toothbrush for when you're cleaning parts. You also need a stiff bristle brush and a wire brush for heavy-duty cleaning. You should always have a couple of flashlights, especially this small flashlight for getting a look into tight places. You'll need some super glue, and this is accelerator, which will set the joint quicker. And you also want to have some of this uncure around just in case you get your fingers stuck together. Here's an example of how you'd use super glue and accelerator. If you put a drop of super glue where you want it, then you hit it with the accelerator, and the glue sets instantly. A lot of you have asked about my engine cradle, and it's a real high-tech piece of equipment. I'll show you where this came from. It's a piece of foam rubber that I got from an electronic packing case, and all I did was cut about this much off of it from here to here. So I had a square, and then I cut that square in half and glued the two halves on top of this. So that gives you an engine cradle that looks like that. Now if we cover it with a towel so we don't lose small plastic parts or small screws, it lets you hold the engine like this, or if you want to work on the underside, it'll hold it like that. You'll need a small oiler like this one. I bought this in a hardware store. I like the kind that has Teflon in it. And it comes in real handy when you want to put a drop of oil on valve gear or any tight situation like you have here. You also need a small test transformer, but don't get it too small. I prefer Lionel's RW transformer like the one we have here. The reason I like that is it has 110 watts, which will run just most anything Lionel has ever made, and it has a dual power range, so you can get low voltage and high voltage. They have a 5 to 15 volt range and a 9 to 19 volt range. You'll need a test track. Don't do anything fancy, just get a few pieces of straight track and an uncoupling section, just enough that you can run an engine back and forth if you've done some repairs to see how it's working, and check couplers on cars and fenders. Do yourself a favor, go to your hardware store and buy several of these small parts drawer containers and set aside a place in your tool shop to mount them on the wall so that you can keep your parts organized. Parts are okay, but if you can't find them, it's a bear. And that kind of leads to one other point too. Have all of your tools arranged so that you can easily get to them. There's nothing more frustrating than to be working on something and you know you need a tool and you know you own it, but you can't find it. Every shop needs the basic tools that we've just shown you. But when you're ready to tackle some of the more complicated repairs, you might want to add these tools to your shop. For lack of a better name, I call this a small parts grabber. This little guy lets you get in to pick up a screw like that. It will also let you start a screw in a very confined space. This is a handy item. It's a high-powered magnifying loupe. It lets you look at an extremely close angle and check things for wear. There's many different kinds of wire strippers on the market. I like this one because when you put the wire in, you can adjust to determine how much of it you want to pull the insulation from, and then just snip it, and it leaves the wire undamaged. Many of these tools also have a secondary function, such as attaching this electrical connection. It's also a crimper, so that you can mount it like that, squeeze it, and it crimps the connector so that it won't come off. This is a volt-ohm meter. The purpose of a volt-ohm meter is just to show you whether or not you have a circuit and how many volts are going through that circuit. You can get expensive ones, you can get cheap ones. This is one I got from Radio Shack 20 years ago, and it probably cost me $25. It works fine. Look at the green dial at the top of the meter. This is the ohm scale. There's a very simple explanation for what we're going to use this for. We're going to see if we have a circuit. If you touch these two together, that's indicating by the full swing to the right that you've got a completed circuit. When you're looking for a short in a track or a locomotive or a wire, if you touch both ends of the track or both ends of the wire, as long as you have a swing, you know you have a circuit. There's a circuit happening there. If it doesn't swing, then you know you don't have a circuit and it's open. The other important function of this volt-ohm meter is to measure voltage. I've set the dial on AC volts and the range is 10. And then we can see, if we watch the meter in the black area, that we can measure voltage up to 10 volts. Even today, these volt-ohm meters are not that expensive. You can spend from $20 to $50 and get yourself a very good volt-ohm meter. These are pin punches. I bought these at a hardware store. One of the functions would be to punch an axle through a locomotive chassis, or to punch it out of a wheel or something like that. This little guy you can find in a drugstore. It's a hypodermic, but it's not a needle. You can use it for cleaning out ears and things like that, I guess, but what I did is make a grease gun out of it. I bought some white lithium grease from the hardware store and loaded it into this, and it's excellent for getting into tight spaces like this little grease socket fitting in this engine. Go to your hobby shop and get a precision nut driver set like this. This is the kind of tool you should use, and only this tool, when you're in a confined space with bright surfaces like this, and you have to remove valve gear. Don't try to put a pair of pliers in there. It could slip off and you could scratch it up, or you could mar a perfectly good engine. This is a brakeman's riveting set. I found this at the York Train Show. But this set of tools will allow you to do repairs on post-war Lionel couplers, and on accessory slide shoes, and on pickup rollers. Here's how it works. Here's a pickup slide shoe for an accessory Lionel car. The set contains this mandrel, so that when you have a shoe and you want to set a new rivet in it, put it on the mandrel, and then put this on, and hit it a couple of times like that, and it sets the rivet just like that. How many of you have post-war couplers where the spring is broken in the knuckle, and the knuckle won't open unless you manually open it? Well, you can fix that by grinding off this rivet, pulling out the knuckle, putting in a new spring, and then put the new rivet back in, set it on the other mandrel provided, like this, and then set the rivet like this. This is a small suction cup based vise. This particular brand is a Panavise. It will allow you to go to a Formica surface on a bench, and I put my own Formica surface into this one, position it where you want it, and then pull this bar over, and now it will hold for anything that you need to do. If you only have one Dremel tool, I would say to get this one. Dremel makes this one. It's called the Freewheeler. It'll let you build up a charge, and then you can use it without having to fool with the cord. The three basic tools that you need to buy, if they don't already come with the kit, is a wire brush, a bristle brush, and a cutoff wheel. When you get tired of using electrical tape on all your solder joints, eventually you'll go down to your electrical supply shop and get shrink tube. Shrink tubing comes in all colors and sizes. The purpose of shrink tube is just to put it over the solder joint like this, and then you just heat the tube with a lighter or a match like this, and it shrinks. See? There. Now that will seal that solder joint up. Over the years, I've gotten into more and more specialized repairs, such as removing locomotive wheels or working on electronic packages. Those things require specialized tools like these. This is a wheel puller. You can get these from some of the parts suppliers or tool suppliers that advertise an O-Gauge railroading magazine. Here's how it works. You use the thin part of the wheel puller and slide it between the wheel and the frame like that. Then you insert the screw, tighten it just a few turns until you cause that U-shaped clamp to bow a little bit, and then tap right here and the wheel will spring off. And the wheel comes off. One of the most important tools in an advanced shop is a wheel press, like the one you see here. It's not just a bench press, but it's this whole series of dies and cups to match the Lionel wheels, as well as other dies to match accessories and hot shoes and all the other things that you might need to press a rivet with or anything else. These wheel cups have a pin located right here, and that's to properly quarter the wheels on the frame of the locomotive. When the cups are properly mounted, the lineup marks line up right here, and that will automatically quarter the wheels because the pin on the lower cup right here will sit in the one wheel, and the pin on this cup is right here. So that's a proper quarter when you mount the wheels like that. This is my Berkshire I've had since I was 9. It's a 736. Let me show you how that fits in the press. If we put the bottom wheel in, setting the pin right in the hole where the valve gear goes, there it is, it's been there just right. And now we'll lower this one onto the top wheel, and it nestles in place just like that. What a trained repairman would do would be to put some shims right here and here, determining the exact distance away from the frame, and then he would press the wheel on a little bit at a time until he bottomed out on those shims. That would put the wheels in proper gauge. Just for the heck of it, as long as we're here, I'm going to check the number 3 axle and see how it looks. Well, this isn't right. It doesn't want to line up. Let me see what's going on here. There. Now it's fitting on there. Well, it fits on the wheel all right, but look at this. The marks are no longer lined up. Well, that tells me why this locomotive has been a noisy locomotive ever since I've had it. The wheels are not properly quartered. This neat little tool is a chip puller, and I'll show you what it does. If you have an electronic sound system, such as this QSI sound system, and you want to remove it from one locomotive and use it in a different one, you may need a different set of sounds, or you may need to upgrade the chip. Well, the top board on that sound system has that sound chip right here. Now, if you look, you'll notice that there's a slot here and there's a slot here. If you pull evenly on this and on this corner of the chip, it'll slide right out and you can push another one back into its place. You can't do that by inserting a tool on either end of this and prying it out. You'll damage the chip. But this chip puller has 2 prongs that are evenly spaced, and when you squeeze it like this, you can see that they both pull at the same time. So you open it up and you insert those 2 prongs in the slot, and then by squeezing the outside edges, the chip pulls right out. This tool is a dial caliper. It measures things to the thousandth of an inch, and it does it in a way that's very easy to read. I use it when I'm setting the gauge on wheels on a locomotive or a car. I measure the gauge by setting the tool across the flanges. And when I get 1.250 inches, that's exactly 1 1/4 inches, which is O gauge. Seeing that measurement tells me that those wheels are perfectly gauged. This is a spring scale with a range of from 0 to 4 pounds. I've attached it to a freight car truck so that we can measure the drawbar pulling power of locomotives. When you couple a locomotive to this thing, it'll measure the drawbar pulling power of the locomotive. This can be a good troubleshooting or diagnostic tool to measure the performance of your locomotives. From time to time, you'll develop little custom tools or jigs like these 2 retaining clips that I use when putting rollers on a ZW. Don't throw them away, save them every time, because sooner or later you're going to use them again. I've probably gotten more questions about this tool more than any other one I've ever used. This is a Dremel tool with a flexible shaft, and I have it on a retractor so that it can hang back up toward the ceiling and get out of the way. The reason for this is a lot easier to use when all you have to hold is something about the size of a ballpoint pen. That's a lot easier than holding a big bulky Dremel tool. And this exotic device that hangs this tool from the ceiling is nothing more than a tool retractor that I found in a tool magazine. You can set the tension by adjusting that screw head right there, and that's all there is to it. If you're fortunate enough to have the room like I have, you can build your shop right next to the room that your train layout is in. If you can do that, then you can set up a test track like this. What I have done is position this test track so that I can pull a locomotive or a train directly through the wall and into the workbench. That way you don't have to take big locomotives off the track, you can just run them right in and work on them. That'll let you have plenty of room to move the locomotive up and down the workbench. You want to incorporate also some uncoupling tracks, unloading sections, anything else that you had in your test track before. Well, I hope that this video has been some help in enabling you to set up your own shop to work on your own trains. That'll do it for this session of the Backshop.